bounce back players. We have a list. This is the National League. And I hate doing this because we almost kind of reduce these players to stock, but we're analyzing and we're predicting. And there are some guys who we're buying low on, we're selling high, and we're obviously not going to be 100% correct on everything. But sometimes I don't like to do this as much, but sometimes it is good because it's still a lot of fun seeing which guys are going to be bounce back candidates. So let's start with number 1, Alec Baume, the third baseman for the Philadelphia Phillies. Okay, so he had just a really bad 2021. He's grounding the ball into the dirt. When you look at Alec Baume's like StatCast data, when you look at his batted ball data, when you look at all of the stuff from watching Alec Baume, because you and I have actually watched a ton of Phillies games, not only because we watch Erin Nola and we bet a lot on the Phillies just in general, whether it be over or unders, but we saw a lot of Alec Baume, and I want to talk about him. But first, what do you see?
Yeah, man, like I see a really unique case. Like he's a very unique player and profile. And there's not a lot of guys that have that high end exit velo. And then the low end power. And then just a lot of just kind of contrasting metrics. But what I really still keeps me, I would say positive on Baume, aside from the fact that, he had that fantastic 2020. I mean, the guy hits the ball so damn hard and he goes the other way really well. I mean, even last year in those struggles, you look at his home runs, you look at his spray charts, he goes the other way with a lot of his home runs. He has to get the ball in the air more. I still believe in Alec Baume. Do I think he's going to be a 330 hitter like he was in the abbreviated 2020 season? Probably not. But I mean, this is a guy that still last year, dude, hit breaking balls well, hit off speed well. It was just fastballs that gave him trouble. And I can't really get to the bottom of it other than he just saw a lot more elevated heat. And this is going to kind of be a theme across a lot of these guys, but saw a lot more elevated heat and seemed to just get beat a lot. I think if he makes the right approach adjustments, he should be okay. But he just hits the ball so hard and goes the other way so well. I don't want to give up on this guy yet after one bad year.
So I tried to figure it out a little bit. And I want to throw this at you to see how it sticks. So if you look at like his zones, like where he's best hitting the ball, like you said, he hits the ball the opposite way a ton, right? But it almost seems like everything that gets in on him and everything with high velo, like you were saying, he just can't seem to hit. So everything that he should be pulling and hitting those home runs to left field, because he does hit the ball so hard, it seems like he's just trying, no matter where the pitch is, to hit it the opposite way. If you go watch, like just look up Alec Baume 2020 highlights on YouTube, everything is the opposite way. Even inside pitches, he's grounding it out to the second baseman. Maybe it finds a hole, but everything is over there. So he's hitting the ball hard, but he needs to get his hands extended. So anything in on the plate, he's not able to generate any power. So it's almost cutting off that side of the plate. Therefore, if he's not elevating the ball, if it's not a perfect pitch out on the plate, maybe it's a little bit up in the zone that he can get some lift on it and get it out. That's the only pitch that he can hit a home run on because he can't elevate anything on the inside part of the plate.
No, I think you're spot on there. I think you're spot on. Like the scouting report was what really got to Baume last year, right? I mean, like he's hitting breaking balls. Like I said, he's hitting off speed.
Yeah,
that's not a problem
with that. No,
that's not a problem for a guy that's getting beat inside.
Agreed.
So I think that the scouting report here is clear. I think it's, hard and in on Alec Baume, hard and up. And he was just getting beat. Yeah, I think he gets a little bit long, and that was a problem for him. He has a strength, which is, I can weight back, I can drive the ball to all fields, but that can't come at the expense of missing fastballs. Fastballs dominate the game, right? So he's going to have to find a way to make that work. He has shown that he did it. Like at the end of the day, he was still hitting fastballs in 2020. It's just they weren't located predominantly inside. I think with the right approach adjustment, he can figure this out.
Agreed.
Am I as confident in him as some of the other guys that we're going to say are going to bounce back? Not necessarily just because fastballs are, it's concerning that you are really struggling against fastballs, but given that he has the ability to hit, he has the track record, he did it in 2020, he still hit breaking balls and off speed in 2021. Like just find that approach, that tweak in your approach. It's different for everybody that helps you hit fastballs middle in, because that's what they're going to be doing to you next year. Like, how they're attacking you. How are you going to adjust? I'm willing to bet that he'll make that adjustment. And I hope he does, because I mean, that would be great for the Phillies too, if he can bounce back a little bit. But yeah, Pete, I think you hit the nail on the head. And I think the whole league kind of figured that out last year. And it was a struggle for him.
Yeah, it was a struggle for him. And I agreed. I'm still on the Alec Baume train. This guy was taken 3rd overall. He's one of the best hitters in college baseball, maybe the best hitter in college baseball that year that he came out. This is not a guy who I think is necessarily going, but there are some concerns. I mean, he does hit the ball into the ground a lot, Aram, like all the time. And why doesn't he hit right-handed pitching, bro? 576 OPS against righties versus 796 OPS against lefties.
I can tell you why right now.
Yeah, why?
Think about it. What do righties do better than lefties?
Pound you in.
Exactly.
Yep.
Exactly. So that kind of reinforces the I think your hypothesis there, right? It's like, if lefties generally don't throw as hard, although, you still have guys that now pump from the left side, but they're not going to go in on you as much. I mean, it's just the way it is, right? And that's why he hits lefties better. It's more change-ups away, and they're not going to jam you in. If there's a lefty with a cutter or something, I guarantee you it's a miserable at bat for him. But that's what it is. It's running fastballs in on his hands, and that's going to be the struggle for him. I think he can do it. Like you said, he has the track record. The exit velos are great. It's great, path, right? Find a path that works for you a little bit. I think if he makes a slight adjustment there, he could be really, really darn good still. I'm betting on a Baume bounce back, and hopefully he can heed some advice from Bryce Harper, Rhys Hoskins, and JT Realmuto, and some of the mashers around him in Philly.
So here's a guy who, I mean, just to say that he struggled with launch angle is an understatement, but it was drastically low. Christian Yelich, man. I mean, he's still hitting the ball harder than most. He still doesn't chase. He still takes his walks. I mean, he's an above average defender, according to outs above average, but he couldn't hit lefties last year. He had a 611 OPS versus lefties and a 781 OPS versus righties. This is a guy who's dealt with back injury after back injury, and he has to get into his back hip. He's a guy who relies on athleticism when it comes to his swing, and he just didn't have that. The back is deteriorating. And I think the only thing, and this is why I hate doing this, when we're talking about injury concerns, because we don't really know the answer to this. But what we do know is that a healthy Christian Yelich is one of the best players in baseball, and a not healthy Christian Yelich is a hole in the lineup, I hate to say.
Yeah, it's tough because, he's a guy that's playing a premium spot for a lineup that really needs his power, right? This is a Brewers lineup that, if Christian Yelich was MVP Christian Yelich last year, they could have easily been the Braves, right? Like they could have been that Braves team. And I generally don't believe in one player making that kind of difference. But when Christian Yelich was, one, in his MVP form, and two, what the Brewers were doing last year in terms of everything else they had going, that could have been the difference. And, I know Yelich knows that, and I'm sure it was killing him. What's interesting is you look at the exit velos and then the expected slugging, and they go this way. And that's so rare, right? You see, even for Baume, who rolls over and everything, like his expected slugging was still pretty high. You look at Yelich, 94th percentile max exit velo, 80th percentile average exit velo, 30th percentile expected slugging. So, that's telling you that, yes, he's hitting the ball hard, but not as frequently as you'd like to see. And his weak contact is terrible. And he's rolling over. He's rolling over.
I saw his topped percentage was massive this year, just like topping balls, rolling things over, not getting a lift, not staying back. It's just not the typical Christian Yelich that we saw, which sucks because the typical Christian Yelich is, I swear, one of the best hitters, like one of the best left-handed hitters like I've seen those years. 2018, 2019, he was unfreaking believable, Aram.
Absolutely, man. And also, don't forget it was a kneecap injury before that. So you got kneecap, and we said we don't want to speculate on injuries. So on this side, he's playing through it though. So we have to talk about it, right? Like, what are we seeing when he's playing? I'm seeing a guy that really is struggling to stay in that back hip, struggling to stay in his lower half. And maybe it would be different for some other guys, but he is a dude that uses that lower half so much and, needs that mobility and that strength down there, that if he's not really able to get into it, it makes sense that he was getting out of his base, rolling over, going to get the ball, just not staying back. He was a type of dude that would take it out of the catcher's glove and go oppo for a home run. He just didn't look the same last year, But look, he's had a whole off season to get right. I'm hoping that's all he needed. And maybe he just needed that time off to get going, because we've had that uncertainty. 2020, we didn't know when the season was going to happen. He's recovering. A lot of different players had soft tissue injuries. We don't know exactly when the season's going to start, but at least we have a little bit more structure in terms of just the world in general.
Yeah.
I'm hoping that he can just bounce back next year. I'm hoping he's been working on those things. At the end of the day, he's still a great athlete. He was still a top 20% in sprint speed.
Yeah.
A type of runner. He doesn't chase at all. Like I'm going to bet he's too good. We got to bet on a bounce back for a 30-year-old Christian Yelich.
There is no shot you're telling me to bet against Christian Yelich. I'm just never going to do it. He could have 5 more bad seasons. The next year, I'm always going to be like, well, I do think he could bounce back a little bit. And maybe even if the data doesn't support it, and not saying that it doesn't here, I'm just saying in the future, if we see just dress, you'd be like, you know what? Just give him a second. Just give him another second. And maybe that's biased. Maybe it isn't. But when I watch Christian Yelich, I still think generational type hitter at the plate. So the next one, Erin Nola. Erin Nola of the Philadelphia Phillies, the classic. He has a really good fit, but a really bad ERA. What was the problem here? What are we going to expect moving forward? But what we do know is that he was just objectively terrible on the road. Split Scott here reporting he was terrible outside of Philadelphia, which is kind of interesting. And really what blew him up, he had a really bad June and a really bad September. He still racks up the strikeouts. He still limits the walks. When you look at Erin Nola, he's interesting. What do you think?
Yeah, this was one that Erin Nola, to me, look, I think he is so supremely talented. I think no one's disputing that. I think we all agree he's got a ton of potential. When he's on, he's on, and we've seen it. But Erin Nola is a very unique guy that I think there's some players that slip through the cracks of analytics, and I think Erin Nola is that guy. And I'll explain why, because he throws a ton of strikes, but he didn't hit his spots last year.
Yep.
Where does that show up in the metrics, right? Like, where does that show up? If it's in the strike zone, we haven't gotten to a point, at least as far as I know, where you're like, oh, catcher was set up here and it was here.
Yeah.
I haven't seen that. Maybe that exists somewhere. I'm sure it does, because we have everything in this world now. But I don't think that's incorporated into XFIP and FIP and all of those things, right? That's one side of it. And if anyone disagrees that he was missing his spots, Erin Nola will tell you himself he was missing his spots. So will JT Realmuto.
JT Realmuto literally said it. He literally said it. And
Nola agreed. I'm missing my spots. That's one side of it. Second thing,
but it's not that he's missing his spots and throwing balls.
No,
he might miss where it's supposed to be an inside fastball, but he leaves it middle, and it's clear. Just go look at the heat map when you look at the fastball. It's middle. Yeah. It's all middle.
Totally. He was missing middle with that fastball. And you know what? He was throwing it way more. He was not throwing it nearly as much last year. Went to the fastball way more, and he gave up a lot of home runs. That's what it was. 11 home runs on the fastball, 10 home runs on the curveball. And go ahead.
I'm just going to say, to give up 10 home runs on a curveball.
Yeah, that's insane.
You're hanging it.
Yep.
You're hanging the curveball. You're hanging the fastball. This was just a year where he was hanging pitches. So I don't want to hear the classic, the huge discrepancy between his FIP and his ERA. So that means he's still a great pitcher. He can still be a great pitcher, and we can still project him to not hang pitches last year. But someone has to take accountability for the fact that he's still hanging pitches right in the middle of the zone arm.
Well, and the crazy thing is the curveball is a great pitch.
It's a great pitch.
It is, and that's what's I think that's what's creating this disconnect.
Yeah,
because it is nasty. It is nasty, like high whiff rate, expected batting average of $188. But the problem is when he misses, it's like a underhand, like, here you go, here's a gift, and it's gone. So
kind of similar to Lucas Giolito's changeup, that high changeup, it's like if it goes middle, it's a meatball.
47 hits off of the curveball, which isn't bad at all given how much he threw it, but 10 of them are bombs.
Yeah.
A quarter of them are bombs. So
it's not good.
Last thing on Nola, that again, I think throws the FIP off a little bit, is FIP is very dependent on home run to fly ball rate. And his home run to fly ball rate. Sorry,
xFIP is dependent on home run to fly ball rate.
Yeah. xFIP is dependent on home run to fly ball rate, and his home run to fly ball rate actually dropped last year. So people are like, "Oh,
wait, xFIP." Sorry, I keep getting in the way of your thought, just being the idiot here. xFIP, it's home run to fly ball rate, but I think no, FIP is home run to fly ball rate. Yes. xFIP it's relating it to major league average.
Yes,
the home run to fly ball rate. Excuse me.
Go.
I just stepped all over your toes for literally no reason, just to be wrong. So continue.
Just to end up going back to where we're at. You're all good. It's a little confusing. So to rehash that, FIP is fielding independent pitching, and that's based on home run to fly ball rate. xFIP will take the league average of home run to fly ball rate and stack you up against the rest of the league on top of other things as well. But that's one of the main contributors here. And Erin Nola's home run to fly ball rate, meaning the percentage of fly balls that left the yard as a home run, dropped by 6%. So you would, conventionally think, oh, he got better in that department. Yeah, but he gave up 13% more fly balls, right? So if we're taking a sample size here, his fly ball rate in 2020 was 27.5%. 2021, it was 40%. So that is a lot more fly balls, right? And he was never a fly ball pitcher. Now all of a sudden he's given up a ton of fly balls. And even if a lower percentage of those fly balls are leaving the yard, it's still more in sheer volume, right? What is 40% of 100 versus 27% of a much larger number? Like, it just doesn't work that way. So I'm looking at it from that perspective too, right? Like, yes, a lower percentage of the fly balls are leaving the yard, but there's more fly balls. So there's in turn more home runs. So like, he became a different pitcher this year. And I think that kind of threw things out of whack. And we're comparing him to almost a totally different pitcher. And that kind of threw the metrics into a loop.
And that's why these guys that throw metrics into a loop are so much fun to debate, because you can really come from all sides of the plate on this one. I mean, also there are some positive things about Erin Nola. I really like the use of his cutter this year, even though it was kind of minimal. I mean, he relied on it mostly against lefties, but I think it's a good pitch to work around with that fastball since it got crushed last year. I wonder if he starts throwing it into righties a little bit. The cutter actually performed pretty well, and it seems like it's a good change of pace from the fastball a little bit.
Yeah, I mean, and that's a cool pitch off of the sinker. You bury a sinker, go the other way with a cutter. That's the thing about Nola, is he's like a Swiss Army knife. He's got four-seamer, sinker, curveball, changeup, and a cutter that he started to show. So, like, I think he can figure it out. I really think he got caught in between of what he was in 2020. I mean, to see your fly ball rate jump by 13% and your ground ball rate drop by 10%, weird. I mean, that is a really unique change there. And I think a lot of that was due to the uptick in using the fastball, but also just the general fastball command, because the four-seamer had a 135 batting average in 2020. So, I think he was trying to be a higher swing and miss guy. And so that's what people are pointing towards. Like, oh yeah, he got more swings and misses, in a lot of different spots. Like, he was pounding the zone more because he threw the fastball more, but he wasn't hitting the spots with the fastball. And I think you can kind of tell that he didn't have that much confidence in the fastball in 2020 because he was throwing it the third most. He threw his changeup and his curveball more than the heater in 2020. That's not something a guy does that has supreme confidence in his fastball. Great. And I think he wanted to try to establish the heater in 2021, and it just didn't work. It didn't work. And I think that's a big reason why we saw this chaos in the metrics. You can point towards the FIP, you can point towards those things, but when you have such just, I would say, numbers that are just so much different than what we've seen in the past in terms of the batted ball metrics, it's kind of hard to cite those things. All that to say, I still think he's going to be better next year. I think he's going to learn from this. I like that he's got JT behind the dish to work with him. I think he's got a lot of good things going for him there. And again, the command overall, the control is good, which is important. The command, I think, will get better. And I think he's still feeling out his arsenal. Clearly, there was some tinkering last year, and I think he's going to figure himself out next year. I think he's going to be better.
I agree. I think what happened is he hung some pitches middle last year. And just to simplify it down, I think he just hung pitches in the middle of the zone. And if he doesn't hang pitches in the middle of the zone, this could be, again, one of the better pitchers in Major League Baseball. But it's funny. Are we buying low? Because I think some, very analytically driven minds, which we do appreciate, would say he didn't even have a bad year.
Yeah.
Just because the ERA doesn't matter and all that kind of stuff, which is fine. You like what you like. But I still don't think he had a good year. So I would say I'm buying low, but I'm not necessarily saying, oh, yeah, he actually had a great year and I'm buying high.
Yeah.
What is that?
It boils down to this for me. Like these advanced stats are indicators of what you can expect in the future, right? Like you could say he performed better than his 4.63 ERA, and I'm totally okay with that. But at the end of the day, he had a 4.63 ERA because he gave up 93 earned runs in 180 and 2/3 innings, and that's the reality. And what we're saying is he will be better than that next year. I think everybody agrees with us, but we're saying that beyond just what the analytics point towards, because I do think that it's a little bit more concerning than that. Like, I don't think it's a shoe-in. He's got some things to work out, but I think he will. I think it'd be crazy to say he won't be better next year.
I would say we solved the Erin Nola situation, but I don't think anyone on earth can actually solve what happened to him last year. But we're expecting good things. We're expecting good things. Here's a guy who I don't know if I'm expecting good things are moving forward, but maybe you can convince me. I don't know what side you're on. Dom Smith, New York Mets. He had one good month in July. Other than that, not too hot. Dom Smith did not have that great of a year, and offensively is where he's supposed to make his money, because in the outfield at first base, he's just not a good defender. Probably needs to move over to the American League, play some DH, because I don't know what position he should play. I guess you would say first base, but yeah, you'd say first base because you're not saying the outfield. And this is another guy, Dom Smith, way better, weirdly, against left-handed pitching than right-handed pitching. You would think that this might be a platoon guy, but he's actually better against lefties, 783 OPS versus 622 OPS against right-handed pitchers, excuse me. What do you think about Dom Smith moving forward?
Gosh, he's a tough one, man, because that whole Mets team was a disaster last year.
No.
Something that we've read, I think there was a nice piece out. Shoot, I'm drawing a blank on who wrote it. I'll definitely try to tweet it out later, but it was about how the Mets just got so lost in overanalyzing their at-bats. Like they were really far down the rabbit hole of trying to almost predict the way they're going to get pitched to and just getting way too deep into it. And that's why, they have a new hitting coach. They have a whole new philosophy, and they have a different approach to things. To me, Dom Smith just looked like a different hitter. He just didn't look like the same guy. I'm really torn on him though, man, because at the end of the day, it's not like he has this fantastic track record where he's just always mashed. He's had good seasons, but at the end of the day, like, he was a late bloomer, really started to show it in 2019, 2020 abbreviated. It's been like a season and a half of him really showing that he can hit, if that. I think he's better, obviously, than he was last year, but I don't think Dom Smith is the guy that he looked like in 2020. I think he's better than 2021. But I guess in a way I would say sell, just because he's not going to make a big enough move. Like if I have only $1,000 to spend on stock, I'm not buying Dom Smith, even though it'll improve incrementally, because I think there's better buys out there, if that makes sense. Dom Smith will be better than he was in 2021 or 2021, but I don't think he's this impact regular. I just don't know if he's that guy.
Agreed, because I totally agree with what you're saying, because I know he didn't play a ton in 2017, only 49 games. In 2018, he only played 56 games. And in 2019, he only played 89 games. But the OPS 2017 to 2019, 657, 675, 880. So he had a great year in 2019, and then he had a 993 OPS in a shortened season in 2020. But then we saw him drop right back down to 667 again. When I think Dom Smith, I think around between 880 and 667. I know that's a huge gap, but I'm thinking it's actually probably closer to the 667 OPS. I'm thinking, 730 to 740 OPS guy. Like, that's where I think Dom Smith is. I think he's a fine hitter, fine with no defensive position, and he's a reverse splits guy.
Yeah, it's not great. And he doesn't walk.
He doesn't walk. I don't know where to put him. I don't know. I think he can be a fine hitter. Maybe if you just put him in a DH role, let him focus solely on hitting, Could he be an 800 OPS guy? But like even saying that, I don't know, man.
It's tough, man, because like
this was his first year playing a full season. Like he's never played above 90 games before. And then in his first full in 145 games, he has a 667 OPS. And yes, you could point to the Mets dysfunction and say, oh, well, maybe it was just a down year, but not right. I mean, kind of
well, you know, it kind of boils down to this, man. Like he had 130 good games or 140 good games and 140 really bad games through the last 3 seasons. And again, I think this is a guy that is kind of in the middle of the two things we saw. But when you're not walking, when you have the struggles against opposite-handed pitchers, and you don't have a defensive position, this is a guy that I think, you know, could end up having some nice years, 28, 29. He gets thrown into a mediocre rebuilding team and sneaks in and hits 30 home runs for like the Orioles. You know, like I could see him being that guy, but I don't see him being a guy that has a prominent role with the Mets at any point. He's going to be the dude that kind of just ends up with the D-backs and hits 30 jacks. Like he's going to be one of those guys that just kind of does cleanup duty on a rebuilding team. That's kind of how I see it. And I just don't think any winning team is going to put this guy in the lineup every single day. And I don't think he's really going to get consistent ABs unless he goes to one of those rebuilding teams here and there. He'll stick around for a while. He's a phenomenal bench bat as a left-handed bat off the bench, and a great, platoon type of guy. But how are you platooning a reverse splits dude? It's weird. I'm going to sell on Dom. I'm not really holding my breath on him.
You tell me if this is projectable. He hit 362 against breaking balls in 2020 and hit 343 against changeups. Is that projectable? Because in 2021, he hit 208 against breaking balls and 215 against changeups. He had a 990 OPS in 2020. He's never done that before in any other seasons. He was never a guy consistently hitting breaking balls, except, of course, 2019, where he hit 291. But in the previous years, everything was below 200. So that's just a matter of fact. He had a great year in 2020, hitting some sliders, hitting some curveballs. Maybe it hang for him in a shortened season with not a lot of data. And then 2021, he just kind of got exposed because he's actually not that good at hitting breaking balls. So what? Best case scenario, Kyle Schwarber? I mean,
not even.
Like Kyle Schwarber hits nukes.
Yeah, I don't.
Dom Smith doesn't have that power. I mean, look at the average exit velos; they're just not there. Even max, that's 65th percentile.
Yeah, if he had some kind of like crazy juice, where it's like, okay, he just needs to connect a bit more, I'd be in on it, but he doesn't. So I just think there's too many questions, and I'm going to lean towards no on him. Does make, a decent amount of contact, but he doesn't walk. So that's another big question. I'm going no on him.
Here's another Mets guy that I do think is going to bounce back. Jeff Mcneil. The only weird thing about Jeff Mcneil is he had a kind of a rough season, OPS near 700. Not great. Not something that we normally like to see from Jeff Mcneil. But Jeff Mcneil, I think he was actually maybe a person who felt the dysfunction of the Mets, maybe more than a guy like Dom Smith did. Jeff Mcneil is still a very good player who I think just had a down year in 2021, but it was also just another weird thing. He was terrible away from Citi Field, Aram. Terrible. 557 OPS versus an 800 OPS at home. A 250-point drop in OPS just hitting on the road when Citi Field isn't a hitter's park.
Dude, you want to hear even crazier? In WRC Plus, 130 at home, 57 on the road.
That's horrible.
It's horrid. I couldn't even conjure up a guess as to why that's a thing. I couldn't. So I won't even pretend I know what that is. But the fact of the matter is, I mean, he could swing it at home, right? I mean, like he was good at home. He finished a little bit better. He had a good July. Like I think people thought he was breaking out of it in July when he absolutely mashed for a little bit. It just was one of those years where I think he just got lost, I think, in a lot of that dysfunction of the whole team. I watched when I went and covered one of the Mets games, and he was doing the post-game presser because he went yard towards the end of the season. And they asked him, like, what do you think about this whole year? And what do you think it says about you and everything? And as a player, and he goes like, I know I can be one of the better hitters, in this game. Like I agree. I have that ability. And he really, there's some people that just say it, you can tell when a guy's just saying it. Like I could tell he believed it in that press conference when we were there. He's just too good of a hitter, like bat to ball wise, approach wise. Again, I think this is a guy that was just caught over analyzing things at the dish. And I'm buying a Jeff McNeil bounce back. Frankly, he would have been one of the guys going into the year that I would have said is like one of the safer bets to just give you 280, 350, 440.
Totally agreed. And when you even look at the OPS, like, and this is just to summarize it quickly, just to kind of simplify it a little bit. We have an 852 OPS in 2019. We have a 915 OPS in 2019, 837 in 2020, 679 in 2021. Do we think that's going to happen again? I'm going to go on the side of no, it doesn't happen again. He's too good of a player. He makes up for it on other ends. Things like Dom Smith can't do is that Jeff McNeil is a very good defender. Jeff McNeil doesn't swing and miss that much. Jeff McNeil doesn't chase that much. The only problem is Jeff McNeil didn't really walk as much as he normally does, and he didn't hit for the same type of power. That's where we might see Jeff McNeil trail off a little bit, is the power department, because generally he doesn't hit the ball that hard. I mean, he's in the lower quadrant in average exit velocity. He's even lower in hard hit percentage. He's not a guy who's going to barrel you up and hit you 20, 25, 30 home runs anymore. But I agree. The batting average should bounce back. He should go back to just taking some more pitches. I just think the power might, he hit 23 home runs in 2019. I don't see that happening again, maybe 15 to 20 on the high end, but I think everything else will return and we'll still see anywhere from an 820 to an 840 OPS with above average defense and the Swiss Army knife kind of appeal where he can play a bunch of different positions. That's very valuable on any team. I think Jeff McNeil, buy low. I think he's going to be great.
Yeah, I think he's got that 15, 20 home run power. I think, but he's a guy that's going to hit the ball a lot. That's his game. Spray it all over the field, a ton of contact, just a pretty good all around, just a ball player. And I expect that to continue. I really do. After him and Lindor saw the raccoon in the clubhouse, I think there's a lot, or just in the tunnel or whatever, allegedly.
Yeah, allegedly.
There's obviously a lot of turmoil there. He will figure it out, and he's a really valuable piece for them, and the Mets know that. And I'm expecting him to be a nice 120, 125 WRC plus guy next year, and play all over the diamond. I think he's going to be a good fit for them next year.
I agree. We're both buying low. Next one, dude, Cody Bellinger. Say what you want about batting average. He hit 165.
Yeah,
Cody Bellinger hit 165 with a 542 OPS. The great thing about Cody Bellinger, you can't get any worse, can you? But literally, this is also a guy who was dealing with injuries all year. And we could go through the batted ball data. We could tell you why we think he's going to bounce back. He's going to. He has to bounce back. I think just to what level will he bounce back is a more important question for us. Not whether or not he's going to be better than 165, but where we think he's going to slot into. Do we think he's going to be MVP Bellinger again? Or do we think maybe not? I lean between... I think he's going to be like an all-star caliber player. Like maybe not make an all-star team, but be a very solid, above average regular, not an MVP, but still a really good player. What's your take on Cody Bellinger?
I think it's still in there. I lean towards what you're saying, but I definitely think it's still in there. And
agreed.
We saw it in the postseason, and he's a guy when he gets hot. I mean, he gets hot. I don't think either of us would be shocked, right? If he shows up next year and hits 40, I really wouldn't be shocked at all if he hits 40. The crazy thing is,
I got to be honest, I'd be shocked if he hit 40 next year.
You'd be shocked? I wouldn't be
40?
shocked if he hit 40.
I'd be like, whoa, okay, now he's all the way back. I mean,
okay, so I'm a little bit more bullish then.
He had 10 home runs last year.
I know. And so we talk about like the struggle with speculating on injuries and stuff like that. The left or the right shoulder as a left-handed hitter, it's especially for him. That's something that I think really impacted him and impacted his path and impacted his ability to really get that snap from where he wants to start his swing. And obviously he had other injuries that he dealt with throughout the year that limited him. Still, there was a lot of approach differences. So you can talk about the injuries, and that's why we say like we want to stay, at least talking more about the baseball side of things. I feel like some of that was holding him back. And then also maybe resulting in an impact in his approach, because we saw the chase rate jump by 6% and 8% if you go back a year before that. We saw the swing percentage in general jump up. It was almost like he felt like he had to cheat, right? He just felt like he could not get that bat out there as quick. And when you're trying to cheat, you got to make your decisions quicker. And when you got to make your decisions quicker, you're more likely to make the wrong decision. And that's exactly what we saw. So that's one side of it. But what I'm really encouraged by is how good he got in the postseason. And here's a crazy stat for you, Pete. He hit 307 in the postseason, which is phenomenal. But he had more hits in 12 postseason games, which was 12 hits, than he did in the entire month of July.
Oh, 11. No, Cody.
11. So
no, Cody.
The good news is July was before the playoffs, right? The playoffs are the most recent iteration we've got of Cody Bellinger. And there was one swing that is forever ingrained in my mind. And it was the pitch that did him in all freaking year, the high fastball. And he had a horrible swing just before that, swung under a heater, and then adjusts and crushes a heater that was up, 3-run bomb to tie the game in the postseason at Dodger Stadium. That swing to me, one was showing the approach and showing that he's able to get there. I hope he's playing that swing over in his head over and over and over and over again as he goes into this year. I'm betting on a big time Cody Bellinger bounce back, and I understand your caution and I feel it, but I'm gonna be a little bold here and say he gets back to like full-fledged Cody Bellinger. He's 26.
Yeah. No,
he's an MVP already, and he's 26.
I agree. No, I think he could. I think he will bounce back. What I was saying by moderate all-star, not to the Cody Bellinger level, is what I was looking at. I was like, I think he's going to 280 with 30 bombs next year and play above average defense. Like that was what I was just kind of thought he was going to slide into.
Probably the most likely.
47 bombs hitting like 330. Like I was like, dude, that's an insane year. But I think the stat that kind of tells the story, at least for me, I mean, not the full story, of course, but the fact that he hit 150 off fastballs last year. That is clearly he was not on time. He couldn't get to high velo. The shoulder was hurting. That's where it is, because you look at every other year.
Too good to have that problem.
Too good to not hit fastballs well. Yeah. In 2019, that crazy year, he hit 327. In the years preceding, it was around 260 to 270. I think he's probably going to hit between 260 to 280 off fastballs and be fine off everything else and just be still a very good hitter. I think that's the thing. He couldn't hit the fastball. He wasn't on time. He was injured. He couldn't catch up to high velo. And when you're seeing 60% of the same pitch that you can't touch,
get domed up.
You get domed up. All right. Moving on to another guy who Coors, Trevor Story. 880 OPS at home in nice Coors Field and a 717 OPS away from the launch pad. He chased more than usual. He just swung a lot, Aram. Like he just swung way more than he normally does. Even like his first pitch swinging, like these are up like 6-7%.
Yeah.
Like just take more pitches, Trevor Story. He'll be fine.
Yeah. I almost wonder, I have like two things on this. Like one was he just contract year, like I need to ball out type of pressing,
so, kind of.
Or was he like, I don't want to play here and I don't give a shit and I'm just going to take hacks, or both?
Oh, I think it's the first one.
Yeah. And I think you see players press in their contract year. That was something that it seemed like Story was trying to do a lot, all the time. And, I think he was in a lineup that was not great and he didn't see a ton to hit. And I think he felt the need to just be aggressive.
Agreed.
And when you're swinging first pitch, that's telling me like, I might not see anything to hit this at bat. Let me like pull the trigger now. And if it's in the strike zone, that's not, I mean, Story's not really that guy. He's never been a high contact guy, right? Like he's always been a guy that's going to strike out in the low 20s, but he's never been this ridiculous free swinging guy that, is out of control. So that was surprising to me. I really think that Story's going to go on a 1-year prove it.
I agree.
Because if someone gives him that 1 year prove it, I think he's going to learn from last year and just play ball for a good team, be reinvigorated. You can talk about what you want from the Coors effect, but I think there's really an effect to also just hitting in Coors where balls don't break as much. And then you go away where balls break way more and your approach is almost undermined. Like if you look at his run value against certain pitches, sliders did him the dirtiest. And it's interesting because he was fine against everything else. And he had never really had that kind of issue against sliders. Horizontal break is least impacted by Coors. There's just so many little things that go into it when you're playing on the moon and then have to go play elsewhere. I just think he's too good. He's too good. And DJ LeMahieu is a guy who circumvented those splits. Arenado, he had a good year last year in the power department. I don't really think that was the issue. So I think Story's still going to hit a ton of jacks.
Like I think everyone's like, oh, Coors effect, but it's like we've just been playing for a very long time. He might just, be on the latter part of his career, still hitting you 35 bombs. Maybe he's not hitting you 290, 300 like he was, but 260, 270. I mean, we'll take that with Nolan Aronado. And I just think the ultimate question, and I think, executives, owners, managers, people around baseball, everyone's like, well, what is he outside of Coors? Like, is he a 900 OPS guy? Is he an 800 OPS guy? Is he somewhere in the middle? Is he worse? Because what we do know, I mean, Aram, we were front and center for the home run derby, watching Trevor Story take batting practice. Dude rakes, like not just, has some power and like belongs in the home run derby. No. You watch him. He's one of the better power hitters in baseball. Like this dude can hit the ball 500 feet. He has home runs registered at 500 feet.
Yeah, and not everybody just waltzes into Coors and hits the ball 500.
No, it's kind of hard.
You could say what you want about Coors. Not that many guys just waltz in there and hit 500-foot bombs. Like it just doesn't happen.
He's fast as hell. He has a ton of power. He's rangy. He's excellent defensively. But that's another thing. Terrible defensive year from Trevor Story. That's the craziest part to me because I viewed him as one of the best defensive players in baseball. And yet we got a guy with outs above average in like the 8th percentile, something terrible like that. I mean, what's going on?
I really think there was this level of just burnt out there. I mean, he literally had the quote that was like, I don't even know what they're doing. Like, why am I still here? I think he was excited to potentially get dealt, go to a contender, and now you're stuck on the same freaking team. I really wonder how much of that mattered. I will say, though, I think once all the trade speculation kind of slowed down and, once things kind of got to the point where he's like, okay, I guess I'm staying here, for the rest of this year. He performed well down the final 2 months, 134 WRC plus in August, 117 WRC plus in September. Much better down the stretch. Defense a lot of times can be an effort thing. I don't know what the deal was there. I'd love to see how he bounces back in that department. But I think the numbers, he finished strong. He's just got a track record of hitting. And you talk about, he's not a guy that's hitting the ball 118 miles an hour, but the reason why his balls go so far is because he backspins. He gets easy carry. He's always been a guy that a large percentage of his fly balls leave the yard. That's going to translate outside of Coors. And it already has in terms of the home run to fly ball rate in the past. I think this is a 30 home run guy that's going to play decent defense at shortstop and hit 275 for you. Like that's a good player. And I still think he's that dude for sure.
So what kind of contract would you give him? Yeah.
Honestly, man, I'd give him like a Javi deal. I'd give him a Javi Baez deal. I really would. I know people are saying 1 year show me. I would give him a 5-year deal and feel pretty okay about it. I really would. And maybe that's me that's rolling the dice a little bit, but you could get the opportunity here to get in on, again, that this is a guy that could have been the conversation top 5 shortstop in baseball if he didn't have such a down year last year.
Putting him at number 1.
Yeah, people were doing that. And he still finished with an 800 OPS. Like, this was a down year, 3.5 win player with bad defense. He's still a top 10% runner in terms of sprint speed.
Oh, yeah, he's fast as shit.
This is a guy that's going to figure it out, I think, and get back to where he needs to be. I'm expecting him to be just fine, and I'd give him a 5-year deal. I would. Maybe I know I'm in the minority on that one, but I would.
I think I'm closer to you than closer to not I guess if that makes sense. Like I'm more on the Trevor Story train. I really need to see him perform outside of Colorado. Like that's just the scary thing. That's why I'm all aboard the prove it deal train. But if he says, you know what, I'm worth more than that, I'm like, I'm not going to tell you you're not. Blake Snell is next on our list. Aram, this is a story of 2 seasons. One, pre-All-Star break, 4.99 ERA. He was leaving the fastball middle. Nobody was swinging at the curveball, and Blake Snell was throwing meatballs up there. He was getting rattled. He was getting crushed. But then, post-All-Star break, we have a 3.24 ERA for Blake Snell, led by a phenomenal August. I mean, I remember I bet on a couple of his starts in August because I remember I watched one and I was like, whoa, that's a different pitcher. That's a different pitcher. And then it just showed. But the funny part about Blake Snell is if you look at just like his pitches, you can tell Giants, Dodgers, these teams, they're playing him really smart, right-handed dominant lineups. Just look at how many pitches he threw and what percentage of them were to right-handed hitters. I think it looks like 85-15. He just didn't face lefties all year. And it was, or no, excuse me. Yeah, no, what am I saying? They threw a bunch of right-handed dominant lineups because they didn't want him facing the left-handers. I got all bamboozled, but you know what I'm talking about.
Yeah, no, they're trying to stack against him because what's his best pitch? His slider.
Yeah.
So and that was a pitch that when he started to do well, he threw way more. And that was a big reason for his turnaround. That slider is unhittable to lefties. It really is. And I think it got better and better as the season went on. It's a pitch that he can backleg righties with. But the fastball command was really important. I mean, you look overall, the numbers were great. What people were doing, though, is they were just spitting on it a bit more. Like people weren't chasing his pitches as much. They were trying to make him come into the zone with the fastball because he's somebody that's going to throw a ton of sliders and curveballs. And I think people were just hunting fastballs and daring him to locate the sliders and curveballs. And he wasn't locating them as much. As he got better with that, I mean, he got better and better as the year went on. But I mean, you look overall on a whole body of work, walk rate was up. The command just wasn't there for a lot of the year. And I think he was able to kind of figure it out and say, okay, I'm commanding the slider. It's easier to throw a slider for a strike, a cold strike, than a curveball. And guys were just not pulling the trigger as much on him. So he went to the slider more because he can locate that for a strike more, even against righties. And that's exactly what he did. And I think he figured it out to a degree. I think he's going to be closer to second half Blake Snell. Look, I don't think he's going to be Cy Young Blake Snell, but he's definitely a hell of a lot better than we saw him in the first half. He's going to be more closer to that second half guy that we saw. I think mid 3s ERA with a ton of strikeouts, and he'll give you that occasional just absolute gem when he's really on.
And another one is pitches. We talked about the slider, we talked about the changeup, talked about the fastball. The changeup, he throws it primarily to right-handed hitters. He hasn't thrown it to a lefty since 2017. He threw it twice to a lefty. So that's one thing. It's primarily used against right-handed pitchers. I mean, they hit 429 off the pitch. I mean, he only threw it 10% of the time, so we don't have a ton of data there. But in other years, it's been one of his better pitches. But this year, it got creamed. And maybe you have an answer for me because I tried to go through why, and I don't know why. I simply don't know why. Like, for example, in 2020, he threw it 20% of the time. It was one of his most used pitches. Threw it 20% of the time in 2019. But then he only threw it 10% of the time, and it got schwacked. I don't know why.
Yeah, I wonder if he just really lost a feel for it.
But that sucks moving forward. That's why I wanted to ask the question, because that changeup has been a valuable part of his 4-pitch arsenal. If he's just slider and curveball, and he can't locate those, he's actually screwed because the fastball is hittable. If he doesn't have that 4th pitch, I'm actually nervous about Blake Snell. That's why I brought it up. And when I was looking through it, I couldn't figure out why it was so hittable. It's not that it's so middle.
She just wasn't feeling it.
I don't know.
And it's interesting because that was a pitch that was important for him, and it helped the fastball play up, and that was definitely an issue. I think he's going to find more of a feel for that pitch. He's had it so much in the past. And I think that was part of his success too down the stretch as he started to feel it a little bit more. I still believe in Blake Snell. The track record's there. And, if he didn't show signs of life at the end of the season, I'd be concerned, but he showed signs of life and leaned on the slider more. Even if the changeup doesn't quite work, the curveball could end up being that third speed and a more vertical breaking pitch for, opposite handed hitters to give them another look. I'm going to lean towards Snell bouncing back next year.
Agreed. No, I think Blake Snell is going to bounce back. I just had that question about the changeup because I, frankly, simply don't know. But I do think he's going to bounce back. I do think he's going to be good. I'm guessing that pitch will rebound and he'll be totally fine. Maybe he uses it more. Maybe that actually makes it a better pitch. Maybe the lack of usage made it worse. I don't know. But here's the last person. Here's the last pitcher. Yu Darvish. Tale of two stories, huh? 6.16 ERA post All-Star break versus a 3.09 ERA pre All-Star break. And he was also really bad away from San Diego. We know what happened. They cracked down on something.
Yeah.
Do you attribute Yu Darvish's success to sticky stuff? Or do you think it was just a bad second half? Maybe he didn't adjust well afterwards, but we think he's going to be totally good next year. Because I think there's some concerning things within Yu Darvish's arsenal, but Yu Darvish's arsenal is pretty electric when on. It's just the problem when it's not.
Yeah, my answer is kind of option C, which is I think the stuff is legit. I don't think he had the ability to adapt during the season when they cracked down on it mid-year. I think he was overly dependent on it, and I just don't think he had the ability to adjust as the year went on. This guy just has too many ways to come at you. He's got like 13 pitches. To me, again, another guy that I think needs to go back to the drawing board and say, okay, why, now that they crack down on the sticky stuff, which pitches are not playing as well? And which do I need to go to more often? How do I need to adjust my arsenal? I think his arsenal is not going to play the same, but I mean, this guy is, he's good for a reason. And he's been a dude for a while for a reason. I don't think he's ever going to be the Yu Darvish that he was. I think naturally age is becoming a factor too. He's 35. He's had surgeries, but I mean, he was so bad, dude. And like the cutter, like that's a pitch he needs to just eliminate. Like get that shit the hell out of there, dude. That pitch sucks.
Got destroyed last year.
But that's almost good news, right? Like,
yeah, it almost
don't throw that thing.
Yeah.
Congrats. You don't throw the cutter, and now you just eliminated 11 home runs. Like every other offering was good. Every other offering, 650 OPS against a four-seamer, 500 OPS against a two-seamer, 556 against the slider, 326 against the curveball, 660 against the splitter. I just think he's got to stop throwing the damn cutter. It might just be that simple. And I think the cutter was the pitch that was most affected because a cutter, you're not really doing that much with your arm action. It's grip and you literally let it rip. And I think that was just the change for him. It's just, I think it really changed things.
I also have a question about the cutter. Was Yu Darvish's cutter one of the unluckiest pitches in baseball? There was 160-point difference in slugging versus expected slugging. 624 slugging.
Yeah.
Versus 469 expected. That is incredibly drastic. That's incredible. That's one of the more drastic splits I've seen on a singular pitch when we go through Baseball Savant every day. Like you don't see that often. No. I'm wondering, was it a couple wall scrapers? Was it a couple just balls that found gaps weirdly? I don't know. I don't know how to explain that.
But I think that only helps his case, right? I mean, like a little bit of bad luck, a little bit of like stop throwing that pitch so much.
Yeah.
Like, I'm not saying cut it out, but he's throwing that more than any other pitch almost for the most part. Like I don't know. I would say tone it down a little bit. And it's ironic for Ohtani. It's the same thing. That's Ohtani's worst pitch and he throws it a lot. just throw the pitches that aren't good less. Sometimes it's that simple. It really is that simple. I think he's going to bounce back. Never to the form that he once was, but not what he was when he was bad last year. Arsenal tweak, adjusting to the lack of sticky stuff. I saw that. You saw the video of him throwing sorcery recently. Like he still got it.
Disgusting.
He'll be fine. He'll be fine.
I just wish that he'd throw 4 pitches instead of 9. And like, he doesn't need to throw all of these different pitches all the time. But that's the mystery of you, Darvish. And I agree. I would say you're buying. We think that he's going, like, give me what you think his ERA will be next year. It was 4.22 in 2021. I
think he's going to be mid-3s guy too.
I agree. That's exactly. I was
with
like,
a lot of Ks.
I was just about to say, I think he finishes with a 3.6 ERA
with a ton of Ks and some big performances. Like, let's say him and Snell. Agreed. Like they might have some blow up starts, but they're going to have some.
But it's funny. I'd prefer Snell over Darvish. Would you rather have Darvish over Snell? Sure. You'd rather have Snell over Darvish?
Yeah, Snell over Darvish. At this point, yeah, absolutely. But I mean, Darvish could still be a fantastic rotation piece for you.
Hopefully. So that's it. Get your Just Baseball merch, people. It's in the episode link in the description of this podcast. Get your Just Baseball merch. Get your t-shirts. Get your hats. Get your hoodies. It's cold outside. It's still snowing in New York City. You got to get yourself a hoodie. Go check out Arm's podcast, The Call Up, where he's talking to MLB prospects, all that kind of jazz. And then I'm starting a podcast soon, people. Not gambling advice. We're going to be doing fantasy baseball stuff. We're going to be doing gambling content, and that's going to be co-hosted with my good friend Colby Olson, who's come on this podcast a bunch to talk analytics. He's going to give me the numbers. I'm going to give you the angry, caffeinated person yelling, but giving winners. But dude, I had a terrible Sunday. Terrible.
Yeah, it was a bad
and
start.
my Rams won.
Strong?
No.
You finished strong though. No.
OBJ over. Jimmy Garoppolo.
Why do they keep putting the OBJ line so low? It's weird.
Because they have no idea. They don't know what we're seeing. OBJ, him university. That's what I'm seeing. I'm seeing the best he's looked since the one-headed catch with New York. But Jimmy G, I had under 231.5 passing yards. Guess how many passing yards he finished with?
232.
232. He was at 235. He was at 235. Last play of the game, 3-yard loss of a pass.
Oh my gosh. That would have been an insane hit. And that would have been an insane hit. Oh my gosh. That's wild. Well, looking forward to hearing you talk about those bad beats on the new podcast. But that's going to be fun. Be a lot of fun. You have anything to close us out before we go? Kyle Nicholas, pitching prospect with the Pirates, just traded over in that Jacob Stallings deal. Really exciting. I really like him. Big time arm. He is on the call up tomorrow. So definitely check that out. Go check out his stuff, people. And that's all we got for you. Thank you, everybody.